Hi, Hanu the Honda Makinen here. Welcome to another He-Man video. Last year I made a video where I talked about all the He-Man episodes from Season 1 that I had never intended to make review videos for. And now it is time to talk about Season 2. So, very recently I finally covered the episode The Problem with Power, which I took way too long to finally get to it. But yeah, I finally got around to it, and I was just recently perusing the list of episodes of season 2 that to see if I could finally make that follow-up video, and I was shocked, honestly, to discover that I have already covered the vast majority of episodes from Season 2, either in the review videos, the top 10s, or in some other random videos. And this was really weird to me because I always have this impression in my mind like I've only just scratched the surface on Season 2. But then when you stop to think about like how many He-Man videos I've made, the numbers start to add up a little bit more. So there aren't really that many episodes to cover this time around. And I'm going to be honest, here there are not really like any huge candidates that I would consider as potential future reviews, really. And I actually had a bit of a look at some She-Ra episodes as well. And honestly, I'm starting to think that I don't have anything new to cover with the original Filmation She-Ra either. But anyway, let's go through the episodes of Season 2 that I have never made a review video for, and which I'm almost certainly not going to make. So the first episode to talk about is The Rarest Gift of All. This is yet another one of these episodes where Orko fouls things up, gets all down on himself, and runs away from home. You might remember that there was an episode called The Secret of Grayskull that more or less used the same plot setup. The Rarest Gift of All is, in my view, the diet version of this plot, because the only interesting thing that happens in it, and I'm using the word interesting really loosely here, is that there's this blue monster that shows up halfway through the episode, and that's the final danger. Yeah, it is a really basic episode, not very enjoyable. And again, this is Season 2. This episode has exactly the same problem as The Secret of Grayskull, which is this whole idea that Orko feels useless and decides to leave home. It doesn't make any sense. It's just completely contradictory to the way the character has been portrayed up to this point. Really, like, after Dawn of Dragoon, like, any episode where Orko feels like he's useless and doesn't contribute is honestly just a completely pointless thing to make an episode out of. Next up, Ice Age Cometh, which I always keep calling Iceman Cometh, I have noticed. I honestly have a hard time even remembering the title. This is an episode that I have low-key been considering reviewing, and in fact, kind of even in a thematic sense. There's a couple of ice-themed episodes from Season 2 that I've sort of been kind of contemplating because, as a Finnish person, I always kind of like wintry episodes in cartoons. And this is also the reason why I did a separate review video for the region of Ice. But honestly, the Season 2 Ice episodes on He-Man are just kind of bad. And unfortunately not like funny bad, just like, you know, I don't like watching this. Ice Age Cometh is an SEC episode featuring a child character who wants to be a royal guard, keeps fucking up and never owes up to any of his mistakes. And that's a pretty weak setup to begin with, but the most offensive thing about this entire episode is its one-off villain, Icer. I hate Icer. He looks stupid. Basically, he kind of resembles like a discount Iceman, although of course Icer actually, you know, predates him. I don't understand the thing with his costume. If I'm honest, he looks more like a male exotic dancer to me than an actual supervillain. And then his voice. I mean, he just moans constantly throughout the episode in a very inappropriate way. I think that is the only thing about this episode that is honestly kind of funny, because it's impossible to watch Icer and hold a straight face, because he's just that cringily bad of a villain. The other Ice episode is A Trip to Morania, which also is kind of an SCC episode, but not really. It has two child characters this time, a princess and a prince. The prince who is the heir apparent to the Ice Kingdom, and the princess who is very capable, but nobody gives the time of day, and the plot has something to do with ice crystals or something. This one just isn't very interesting. It's just kind of very middle of the road. Oh, I did forget to mention that one of the few interesting visual flares in the Ice Age Comet episode is that there's this really gnarly looking ice caterpillar. But yeah, this episode is not only kind of visually not super interesting, the plot doesn't really go anywhere. I just don't really get much out of it. Next up is Just a Little Lie, an episode where Orko gives a rock to a prince of another kingdom, pretending that it has some protective magical abilities, although he's completely bullshitting him. Yeah, it's kind of an inane morality story, frankly just not very interesting. The only even mildly interesting part about this episode is that I think the princess' dad has a kind of an interesting character design. Yeah, it's a very basic kind of episode. I honestly kind of have a hard time even staying awake through most of it. It's just not really anything. I'm sorry, a lot of these episode descriptions are probably going to be like this because, like I said, these episodes just aren't very good. Case in point, The Time Wheel. Honestly, The Time Wheel might even be, like, I've never done a redo of my bottom 10 He-Man episodes that would have included only episodes from Season 2, but The Time Wheel is an episode that I think would get very close to getting featured on there. This is an episode where they accidentally use this device called the Time Wheel to bring a warrior king from Eternia's past to the present, and he gets royally pissed off when he discovers that there is another king, Randor, on the throne and thinks he's been overthrown by this pretender. And then he gets freaked out by all the things in the future, and that there is a little battle with some rock monsters or something. And, you know, he gets suitably fed up with everything that he decides to go back to the past. This episode is kind of dumb for a couple of reasons. First of all, the thing that I always find very distracting is that the king from Eternia's past is just a palette swap of one of the Moon Kings from the Shadow of Skeletor. And he doesn't really have any interesting personality traits. He's just kind of a, you know, I mean, he is a warrior king, but, like, there's nothing super fancy about him. And the thing that I really hate is the entire plot arc. It's what I would like to call from A to B to A plot setup. Basically, the characters just start off at a random location. The plot diverts to point B only for it to come right back around to the beginning. It's just a very, like, unrewarding episode to watch. Like, it just feels like there was barely, like, an outline to this episode. It really does feel rushed. Okay, then we come to the episode that I have, you know, contemplated in the past maybe covering. But, again, this episode doesn't really have a whole lot going for it. It's more or less just a one-off villain episode, and this episode is, of course, The Toymaker. It features a villain called the Toymaker, who, much like Modulok, is trying to get into Skeletor's graces by defeating He-Man using his evil toys. And that is pretty much the only thing about this episode that I like. The visual of the Toymaker's evil toys that turn giant and capture Man-at-Arms, that part is kind of cool. I kind of like that. And I do sort of like the design of the Toymaker, but this episode suffers from a problem that it's way too chill. There's no suspense or, you know, drama really throughout the episode. And the Toymaker himself is kind of a pathetic villain at the offset. My favorite part of the episode actually is the ending, when the villains have been already defeated. The Toymaker is actually thinking of just piecing out from the scene. Like, he doesn't even decide to, like, stand down or anything. And then Orko uses his magic to make his magical dinosaur thing disappear, and so he gets caught. The other funny thing is that this is one of those episodes that had a Ram Man appearance that I forgot about, because honestly this episode just isn't very good, so I don't really like watching it that much. But I do like Ram Man's appearance, because it is one of the most lamest character introductions ever, where you just have Tila and Orko looking for some tracks, the camera pans over, and there he is, just like standing around, and it's just such a dopey introduction that it always kind of makes me laugh a little bit. Next one, and this honestly I have thought about also multiple times, but it is honestly just a really big letdown of a follow-up episode, and that episode of course is Capture the Comet Keeper, which is a sequel to the Cosmic Comet, which is the first or second episode of the series, depending on how you want to look at it. And the Cosmic Comet, of course, is one of my favorite He-Man episodes. I really love Zagras the Comet Keeper. And the thing that that's really impressive about that this is an episode that is very late in the series chronology, that they were able to bring Zagras back, and they actually maintained consistency with him. The problem with this episode is that its stakes feel, you know, it doesn't feel like there is really a lot of stakes. Zagreus just gets captured by the villains and they try to force him to work for them, but it doesn't really go anywhere. It's really lacking the drama of the original Cosmic Comet, which was all about Zagreus' self-doubt. And that episode was handled, the emotion, it was emotionally handled like so much better. And I think the fact that it was like a very early, like from the very beginning of the series, is one of the reasons why that episode works so well, and why this episode, it just feels like a diluted version of it. It really is. I can't honestly even remember any solid like tidbits from this episode, because and that's really the case why I haven't bothered to review it, because every single time I sit down and watch it and I'm just thinking like there's nothing to talk about with this episode. It is just a really like poultry follow up. And last, to save the creatures. It's a little unfortunate that I have to end on this one, but at least we have somebody worth talking about it. So this is the third of the 3 episodes in the series, scripted by Don Heckman, who became a bit of a running gag in my He-Man reviews because his 2 other episodes, which have been covered, No Job Too Small and Beauty and the Beast, are some of my favorite episodes because they have these really weird and even kind of like out of place elements in them. And Don Heckman also later went on to write quite a few episodes for She-Ra. Now, the thing with those episodes, the She-Ra ones, Heckman's scripts normally aren't very good, but because he always has some kind of a weird Heckman thing going on, they're kind of fun to talk about. This episode, however, sadly, it's the least weird, and as a result, it is the least interesting and least fun episode of Don Heckman's ones. It has to do with an animal sanctuary. There's an evil scientist that's trying to make the animals work for him for some nefarious purpose, and that's really it. This is a really low stake episode, and like I said, of these episodes, the only ones that I have really ever given any serious thought about maybe covering in a review was the Toy Maker, and frankly, I don't feel like that's really necessary. I think this is unfortunately a little bit of a sign that maybe I gotta get back to those Mike Young production He-Man episodes. It is kind of looking like, there's no more episode reviews from the original He-Man that I really plan to make. But I can say that I am working on a new He-Man Top 10 that relates to the Filmation He-Man series. And until next time, I have the power, so can you.